Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 10, Episode 105. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being here this Friday, Steelers Nation. We are doing this show, just in full disclosure, on Thursday night because we have a very special edition of the podcast. We have a couple new guests, which we'll intro in a second. But, Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's sort of like a terrible podcast palooza today with you. This is going to be, the listeners, this is going to be awkward as all get out, so enjoy it.
And the reason why Dave says that, because it's not just him and I. For today's show, we have three guys who have worked very hard during the draft process. I'm sure you've seen their work and profiles, because they did profiles on a lot of these guys that ended up getting drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we have Josh Carney, Tom Mead, and Daniel Valente. Again, they've all been with us for quite some time now, and so we're really happy to have these guys share their insights on the players that were drafted by Pittsburgh, and then just give them a chance for a platform and different medium because they have worked so hard. So I'll start with Josh. I think you've been here the longest of the three I mentioned, so thanks for being here. Just kind of intro yourself a little bit, how you found the site, how we found you, and kind of what you do here.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for having me on. I do appreciate it. I'm coming up on my 5th season with you guys, which is
Lord
pretty
have
remarkable.
Mercy. That probably makes Alex feel old.
I'm usually the one that feels young on this show, but not today.
Yep. So I found the site in 2011. I was a sophomore in college, and that was kind of my go-to Steelers site. And then I kind of hooked on with John Ledyard at Pro Football. Oh, boy, Pro Football Report. I can't even remember the name of the website. It's been so long. But then he came and worked for you guys, and when he left, he recommended me here and jumped on in. I've been with you guys, like I said, the start of the 2020 season, should we have one, will be my 5th year with you guys. And, I've been with you guys ever since. It's been an awesome ride. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Tell them where you live, Josh, and what you do in the real world.
Okay, so I live in Craig, Colorado. I moved to Colorado in 2015. I was a sports editor in a little town called Glenwood Springs. And then last December, I got hired as the editor of the Craig Daily Press. So I run an entire newspaper now in Northwest Colorado.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Congrats to you. Tom, same thing. Just intro yourself a little bit and tell the folks who you are.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I live in Connecticut. On the outside, I work for a healthcare company. Been doing that for going to be 23 years in September. Found Steelers Depot maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and about a year and a half ago, I saw Dave on Twitter looking for people to help out. So I sent him a link with what I had been doing for Inside the Pylon. And after bugging him a couple times, we got to talking. And right before the Senior Bowl last year, I jumped on. So I've been here about 15, 16 months now, and loving being part of the crew.
And for the hardcore listeners of the podcast, you probably heard Tom before. He filled in for me whenever I was at the Senior Bowl. I know him and Dave talked about a lot of the guys that ended up being on the Steelers radar, including Alex Highsmith. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. Also, Daniel Valente. I know Daniel pretty well. He was at the Senior Bowl with me. We roomed together, had a really good week down there. But Daniel, how are you doing? And tell the fine folks who you are.
Yeah, so thanks for having me again. I think this is my 2nd episode now.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, same thing as Josh, actually. You guys got me when I was a sophomore in college, and I've been reading you guys forever, and I just put out a feeler to Dave. Wasn't expecting nothing of it. And then eventually later that night, he DM'd me, and he was like, what do you think you could bring to the team? And I was, stunned. I was, an awestruck. And then ever since the 2016 season, I believe was my first year, and ever since then, I've just been growing with the site and having a great time.
I like the underclassmen.
Oh my, Dave's gonna get himself in trouble in this episode. So the goal for today's episode is to hear less of Dave and myself.
Yeah.
You guys have heard probably enough of us, too much of us. I'm sure some of you would argue, and really open the floor to Josh and Tom and Daniel and get their thoughts on this draft class. So we'll kind of dive right in here. We'll go just pick by pick. I know some of you guys had the reports on those guys, others didn't, but of course we want to get all your thoughts. I'll start with you though, Josh, because you wrote the report on Chase Claypool, the Steelers pick at number 49, and I think you did a really good job of encapsulating who Claypool is and isn't, the highs and lows of him. So A, were you surprised he was the guy at 49? And then B, just kind of your overall viewpoint on who Chase Claypool is.
Yeah, so I was surprised it was Claypool. In my last mock, I did have a big, physical, fast receiver. I kind of thought that would be the direction they go. Unfortunately, T. Higgins is now in the AFC North with the Bengals, but I was stunned to see Chase Claypool at 49. Everything I had read, he was a third-round guy. I think I even had him as a mid-day 2 guy. I actually had late day 2. So I was stunned with the pick, but it makes sense. I mean, Ben finally gets his big physical toy he's been asking for years. He's a burner. He's a contested catch monster. I'm really happy with the pick, and if you just pop on his tape, you can see exactly how he can win.
What was it that
ahead,
surprised
John.
you so much of him being at 49? What was it that kind of, did you just from the mock drafts perspective, you didn't see him mock that high, or is there anything in his game where you thought like maybe this guy isn't worth a top 50 selection?
I think it was more his game. I think he's still kind of raw as a receiver. He doesn't have that developed route tree at this point. Everything's mainly on the boundary, and then if he's in the slot, he's working vertically. I think I saw something. Dave may have had this. Claypool played, I think, 20% of the snaps in the slot.
Last 2 years, 20%. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so to me, he's an X or a Z, a guy that will win on the outside. His quarterback definitely didn't help him out on tape. Ian Book has some pretty rough tape out there, so Claypool had to bail him out a lot. But, yeah, I just think he's super raw as a route runner. He's going to have to develop in that area, but he'll get on the field on special teams right away.
I was only going to ask, what was it that after the fact now, what was it, when you look back on him, what led to you having him being a later selection than what he actually was? And
just honestly, that route running.
Okay.
There are much better receivers in this class when it comes to route running. And I kind of thought that when we got to 49 on Friday night, I thought it would be Mims over Claypool because of the route running ability. But I mean, I'm not upset with the pick whatsoever. I just think he's going to need at least a year and a half to work on his route tree and work on getting in and out of his breaks quicker. But I mean, he's going to be a red zone threat right away.
Yeah, in full disclosure, I had him as a late third round guy as well too, and really because of kind of the route running needing to develop there. So carry on.
And I think the 4.42, I think that's what he ran in the 40. That really caused him to jump. I mean, there's a clip I have in his breakdown against Louisville where he catches a short drag, and you can see him open it up once he's in space. But he's not a quick twitch burner like some of these other guys are. He's a build-up guy that needs a runway in a sense. So, but I do think that those testing numbers opened a lot of eyes, and I think that's why he was a mid-second.
Daniel, I want to turn to you and talk Senior Bowl, because every time Colbert's talked about the selection of Claypool, they said, we really love what he did down in Mobile. And you're the one guy who talked to him at the Senior Bowl and had an interview with him and, of course, watched him as well. So what impression did you get of Chase Claypool when you spoke to him? And then what did you see down in Mobile that week?
So first, what I saw in Mobile that week, I think you even tweeted it out. It was a clip of him blocking. And, he's a physical guy. He's going to contribute on special teams. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty. And even just talking to him, you get the sense that, he'd be a great fit for the locker room. He's just a down-to-earth guy. He's got humble beginnings. He's from Abbotsford in BC, up in Canada here. So he's really...
How close is that to you? Is that near you at all? My Canada geography is terrible. It's not close?
No, because I'm in Toronto, so it's like a 6-hour flight out to the West Coast.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, he was talking to me about how important leadership is, setting the example, what he has to work on, this and that, very honest and upfront with you. Mm-hmm. So, as from a character perspective, I think he'll be a great fit in that locker room.
And then from the week down there, you saw just kind of the things Colbert talked about, the physicality as a blocker. Anything as a receiver that stuck out to you in a meaningful way?
So on day 3 there, I tweeted out too, he had that really good rep where he got vertical, beat his man off the line. I think he did struggle a bit with like separation and just getting jammed off the line. I think that's something he definitely has to work on. But like Josh is saying, I think you give him a year and a half, and we could start to see those things come to fruition.
Tom, big picture, how do you see Claypool being used in year one? And do you see any threat to this being the signal of this being Juju's last year? There's been some in the local media that thinks that this is the beginning of the end for Juju, that what this selection signals. Do you buy into that? And then again, how do you see him being used as a rookie?
No, I don't buy into that at all. I think Juju's down year last year had a lot to do with the quarterback play, and I think he's going to be able to bounce back. Mm-hmm. As far as how Claypool's going to be used, I think he's going to be used to take the top off the defense. He has the speed that none of those other guys have, and he'll be able to make the contested catches. And now that gives you, him and Washington, you can throw them both down either side, and they can both do that for you. So I think that's going to be a bonus. And special teams is going to be huge. He takes pride in doing that, and I think he's going to be a huge help in that area.
Dave, any other things on Claypool I didn't address you wanted to ask or talk about?
No, just really these guys hit on it. Really, the thing that stuck out the most to me, initial watch, and then since then is the ability to contested catch down the field, and just in the contextualization that I did of his big plays, the average catch distance being more than 20 yards down the field with a bad quarterback. I think Josh is very right. You go back and watch; he didn't get a lot of help from his quarterback there. So imagine playing a full year and learning this system, and then playing with it with a real NFL quarterback, I think will help him as well too. I think we all expect at least a good half of season of a red shirt on him, and then obviously he's going to see snaps along the way and see special teams work there. But combated catch guy is what stuck out to me the most initially.
Absolutely. I want to move on now to the Steelers' third-round pick at 102. They took Alex Highsmith, the outside linebacker from Charlotte. Josh, I know you wrote the report, but I want to start with Tom on this because I think Tom was maybe the first person to mention Alex Highsmith during that Senior Bowl week where he was on with Dave and talked about what Highsmith was either had done or was going to do at the Shrine game. So how did Highsmith get on your radar, Tom? And did this just kind of feel like a Steelers pick from the beginning?
Well, he got on the radar because we wanted to take a look at some of the guys that were going to be playing in the East-West Shrine game and try and find guys that might fit what Pittsburgh does or what they might need. Highsmith was one of those guys. He fit the size and, the edge rushing ability that they look for. And Dabo Sweeney, the head coach at Clemson, was praising about him. So if you're getting that kind of praise from that level of coach, then he definitely deserved to be looked at.
Mm-hmm. Josh, what were your thoughts when you went through the profile on Alex Highsmith and the highs and lows of his game?
Yeah, so Tom actually turned me on to him through that senior or that report that he did, and then obviously his podcast with Dave. I knew nothing about him. I went in thinking, okay, this might be another Jalen Ferguson. You can pull up that name from last year's draft class. He's now a Raven, just small school guy, racked up sacks, but right away you can see some of the explosive movement Highsmith has. That game against Clemson, I think he had 1.5 sacks. Both of them were just high effort plays, but you can see the explosion in his game. It's just littered all throughout his film. He's a fluid mover. He's got powerful hands. Just right away, once I started watching, I was like, yeah, this kind of feels like a Steelers guy.
Sorry if you hear the train. That's the sixth member of the Terrible Podcast in the background. It's the train outside my window. Daniel, I'll go to you. Just kind of what's your impression of Highsmith's game? What kind of impact can he make in year one?
So year one, I think he'll be sitting behind TJ and Bud Dupree there, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I mean, he's going to have a whole year to develop, and he's the backup plan if Dupree ends up walking after next year. But I really think he has the potential to be one of the best picks from this class. He's a small school guy, but if he's playing at a bigger school, would he still have been on the board at that selection? I think that's one question to ask. And I think the Steelers are banking on that his best is still yet to come. And with NFL coaching, he could reach that potential.
Mm-hmm. Dave, what do you see as ceiling for snaps in year one? Is it 10, 15 a game? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, barring injury, of course, we always need to throw that out there. But, man, I know you guys, I've sent you guys a lot of the Charlotte games already. I don't know how much and outside of the actual footage of it being awful, from a production standpoint, it'd be nice to have a larger selection of all 22 on them, and we'll see if we can get that. But just the level of kind of rawness, but the ceiling on him, I think, is higher than maybe what we think it is right now, from the sheer fact that this is a guy that spent 2018 more as a 4-eye or a 5-tech there, and really just one season of working with West, I think was his last name, the defensive coordinator there at Charlotte, and working on a repertoire. So I think he's got to get stronger, especially against the run, and I think he still has a lot to learn about setting up moves and counters and actually learning the game standing on his feet. So I think there is to what degree that ceiling is. I mean, let's face it, he's a small school kid, so he's got an uphill battle here on him. But I don't think we've seen his best yet, from the sheer fact that he was a small school guy and he was really a 1-year starter standing up on the outside there.
Guys, is there any concern that almost 35% of his sacks last year came in one game against, I think it was Old Dominion? Is there any concern from that?
I would be less concerned if I didn't see him perform the way he performed against Clemson and Tennessee. So I think when you see him perform well in those big-time games, you see him play well at the Shrine game like Tom talked about. So had it just been where his only moments to shine came in those small school games, I mean, that ODU game, that left tackle was just, I don't know if he was a freshman or what.
He kept clapping his hands together.
That was the only thing he did the entire game to protect his quarterback.
He was like a turnstile there. And I'll add on to the fact that by watching more tape on him from what I have seen, I've still got a lot more to go on him too, is he still made other plays other than the sacks with the pressure. He 2 interceptions that I know of that he forced by getting there and hitting the quarterback as the ball was getting away from getting out from the quarterback there. So, and then obviously, and look, one of his pressures he basically chased one of his sacks, he basically chased the quarterback out of bounds. But when you look at his sack reel in totality here, I don't think you're looking at a Jarvis Jones sack reel from when he came out of Georgia there. So I am optimistic, but I think he's got a lot of developing to do too. So that's why I'm hesitant to say that 10, 12 snaps a game on average might be what we're expecting here as rookie season.
I want to go to day 3 now with their first of 2 fourth-round picks, with Anthony Mcfarland taken at 124. This one was probably the one that was most controversial that Dave and I have talked about just from a fit value standpoint, but I like to always focus on the player at first. And Daniel, I'll start with you. What was your impression on Anthony Mcfarland? You wrote the report on him. Dave, I think, gave a great summary of it, of how well you described his game. So what is your takeaway for Anthony Mcfarland Jr.?
So I think he's actually going to surprise a lot of people with the Steelers. So, there's obviously the connection there with Matt Canada, the new quarterback coach. And if you look at McFarland's tape from 2018, you'll come away really impressed. And I think if Canada gets some of his philosophies in with the offense, whether it be more jet sweeps or stuff like that, you're going to see McFarland utilized probably more than some people expect. And just from watching his tape, his 2018 tape is a lot better than his 2019 because of injury concerns and stuff like that. But he's not the typical Steelers mold at running back. I think even if you look at the studies, they always have a similar shape, whether it's Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels. Right. And McFarland's going to bring something different to the table. He's a home run threat anytime he touches the ball, and he breaks a lot more tackles than I even expected.
I agree. That shape is usually a circle when it comes to the running back position, so it's nice to have a different body type. Tom, how important is it to get a guy with McFarland's speed and big playability in this rushing attack that is just struggling to create dynamic and big runs? They're 30th in the NFL the last 3 years in runs of 20-plus yards. So how important is that to get that big play element to this offense?
It's huge. It's something they haven't had since, Fast Willie Parker. It's been a long time since they've had that speed back. I remember the 2008 game against Ohio State, watching it live as it was happening, when he took a ball 81 yards for a touchdown, and then 5 minutes later, he took another one 75 yards for a touchdown, and that was in the first quarter. So right there, you had me looking him up, trying to find out who he was. And I thought he might be a little bit undersized, but looking at some of the numbers, he's the same size as basically J.K. Dobbins. So I think he can handle the pounding, but that speed is something they're going to enjoy having.
Yeah, I see a lot of comparisons to Dre Archer. He's a lot bigger, a lot more muscular than Dre Archer. Although it is weird, he weighed in at 208 at the combine. I think the Steelers website has listed like 193. I know that's the website, doesn't mean a whole lot, but that is kind of a curiosity. Josh, in terms of the fit and value, is there a concern over maybe some redundancy? Because they did sign Kareth White last year. He is a similar type back, not exact, but similar in terms of the big playability. Does that worry you? And do you feel like they could have gone in a different direction other than running back with that 4th round pick?
I probably would have went in a different direction. I think there's greater needs on this team than, a change of pace running back. I do think he's similar to Kareth White, but obviously Mcfarland's a better player overall. But yeah, I definitely would have went in a different direction. I was kind of with you guys that if you were going to draft a running back in this draft, do it at 49. If not, don't do it at all. So I was very surprised to see a guy like Mcfarland to open up the 4th round. But I think there is a clear fit. They need a change of pace guy. They need a speed guy, someone that can, rip off that home run and put 6 on the board immediately. So I think he's a good fit for the roster, but maybe not for 2020 because I just don't see how he gets on the field for more than maybe 5 or 6 offensive snaps a game.
Dave, have you warmed up to the pick? I get the impression that you kind of like it more than maybe initially after watching him more these last couple of days.
Alex and guys, can you hold on a minute so I can pull my foot out of my mouth here? I know that's hard to hear coming from me, but look, Alex and I talked a lot pre-draft process. Okay, if they're going to get a running back, get one of the top ones. If you're going to get one of those, squatty, kind of power runners, if you will, go ahead and get CHE, Dobbins, whoever. Okay, but get them early because after that, you're probably just not going to find anything worth taking. I got to admit, I didn't, other than Daniel's profile on him before the draft there, which by the way, I've watched Daniel really progress as a scout here over the years, and I watched a lot of tape before I went back and watched Daniel's or read Daniel's profile on him. It was right on the money. So kudos to Daniel on that. But going back to him. I was really impressed with the tape that this is kind of the back that I thought they needed, or if they were going to take in the early rounds, they should have taken in the early rounds. That I think they got him kind of at a bargain price there in the 4th round. I mean, he's not your typical Chris Rainey, Dre Archer kind of back. He does give you that. I mean, look, I've already contextualized his big plays, from the last couple seasons. That kid, the thing that jumped out to me, man, was he plays a lot faster than 4.44 there. So I have warmed up to it some. Now here's the important part. We know he's going to probably make the roster. You got to find a way to get him on the field and get him carries at least initially, and then hopefully maybe try to work him into the passing game, or as Daniel said, the jet sweep. Look, you go back to his 2018 tape, and Daniel, I'm sure you'll agree with this. Matt Canada liked to use the jet sweeps with that kid.
Oh yeah. Even I forget what game it was, but it was at least a couple times a game where you just see it, and it helps open up the offense for other things too as well, right?
Right, most definitely there too. And look, I mean, he didn't get a lot of passes. Mcfarland wasn't used extensively in the passing game, but when he caught the ball and he broke tackles a few times there. And we don't know to what degree that ankle was bothering him last year. It obviously cost him some time there because of they basically had to go to him and say, look, we've got to sit you down and get you right here on this. But I mean, if you go back to the 2018 tape with him and you see that explosive, and I think Alex, I'll let you end on it here. His ability once he gets on the edge, and these Big Ten athletes having the angle on him and him beating them to the outside is really something to behold there. And we haven't seen Steelers running backs do that in I don't know how long. So, yeah, I am warming up to the pick. I get it now with him. And let me go back and put my foot back in my mouth.
No, there's certainly talent there. There's no denying that. Yeah, you know when you have speed, when you're what I call an angle buster, when a defender has the angle, has the path to take you to the ball, and you still outrun him. And he did that routinely. I did a short video on Steelers Depot earlier this week. I think 4 clips of that where he's outrunning safeties and linebackers and guys that should be able to make that play because he has that speed to win the edge and balance it and good vision as well. So it's definitely it's no denying how fast Anthony Mcfarland is and how refreshing that is. If they were going to take a running back, I'm glad they took somebody in that mold as opposed to the 225-plus pound plodder like they've taken and guys like Benny Snell and others in recent history. Last question, I want to just open question to any of you guys. Do you see him as an asset in the kick return game year one? Only one career kick return that ran back for 40 yards against Michigan State this year. I think he has a skill set to do it. We haven't seen the resume, though. Do you think he can factor in special teams in the kick return game?
Can I jump on that first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I actually reached out to a classmate of mine who is a beat reporter for Maryland football. I asked him about the character concerns that we were hearing and all that, and I asked about kick returning and receiving. And they said he said a lot of that in terms of the lack of production was due to the injury this year. Mcfarland would return kicks all the time in practice, so he has certainly worked on it. But I do see him kind of taking that away from Kareth White as well. I mean, if you got a guy back there who runs a 4.44 and you spent a 4th-round pick on him, at least give him a shot. I mean, it's better than some of the names they've had back there in recent years.
Is that where the rest of you guys come in on what Josh is saying?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if he's got that speed and he's got that ability, it would almost feel criminal to not give him a shot and see what he can do.
Daniel?
I'm on the same page. Like you said, if he can, he has a speed to be that angle buster. That's huge on kick returns. So you got to give him a shot. I don't expect much because there's so many touchbacks now that it's it's kind of another lost position. But he's definitely someone who's going to be in the mix there.
Yeah.
Alex, you know how I feel. Catch the ball and run straight fast, and I think he can. I think he can run straight fast.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any fumble issues, does he?
I know he had one inside the red zone there that I've come across as far as, but I don't remember it being a huge concern there as far as ball security goes overall with him. But look, I mean, as Alex said, it was obviously easy to find his one kickoff return. It happened in his final game at Michigan State. And look, I get it. He was your top running back. You probably don't want to risk that a lot. Plus, they had who was it? Javon Leak ended up being Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Year. So I get it, and to hear the coach talk, he did do that, and it backs up what Josh just said. That he did was in the punt return and kickoff return line in practice there, and he has the skill set to do it. So now we'll see. Look, I fully expect Alex to report that he's at least in the lines.
He should be, yeah. I mean, and I'm all for bringing in somebody with pure speed in that kick return game because the Steelers' kick return average has been bottom 3 for at least the last 3 straight years, I believe. And it's Danny Smith's only flaw he has is fixing the Steelers' kick return game. So I'm open to any solution. I think Mcfarland has the skill set to do it. Moving on to the other 4th-round pick, Kevin Dotson. I think this is going to be a fan.
But before we go any further, have any of you guys been able to look? Daniel, you and I probably have taken the deepest look at him. Pass protection with Mcfarland.
No.
It's kind of hit or miss. You want to see him be more physical at times, but I mean, that's probably like when you got a guy like that. Probably like one of the least concerns. As long as he's a playmaker, it's not like, it's something that could be developed.
Mm-hmm. My thought though is if you want to put him back there, year one to protect Ben coming off elbow surgery. I mean, he's got to be able to do a little bit of it. Did he do a lot of pass pro, or are the examples like Jalen Samuels where it's very hard to find examples of it?
It's very hard to find from what I've gone through so far, and a lot of it's kind of chipping stuff on the outside as he's releasing. You don't Benny, like last year it was easier to pick out the stuff with Benny Snell stepping up in there and sticking the face in the fan. It's hard to find that in Mcfarland's tape so far. Yeah. Not saying that it ain't there. Lord knows we've got a large selection of tape to go through for the next couple of months here, but I've yet to come across something where I went, oh yeah, oh boy,
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the other fourth-round pick at 135, Kevin Dotson, the guard from Louisiana Lafayette, first non-combine player drafted by anyone. I did not think Pittsburgh was going to be the team to take that first guy. I think already becoming a fan favorite, the people mover, I think it was his nickname, and certainly apt because this guy can run block. Josh, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the Dotson selection?
It makes a ton of sense. I mean, obviously you heard, the Rooneys come out and say, we got to fix the run game. And obviously losing Ramon Foster hurts, but you get a road grader in Dotson. The fit is clear. Obviously, I think he's going to take a year or two to develop. But if you want to get your run game going, you need a nasty guard inside, and he certainly fits the bill. So I was very pleased with this one. I know that when the selection happened, I was kind of going back and forth on him and Bredesen from Michigan. Mm-hmm. But Dotson makes a ton of sense. His tape is a lot of fun to watch. I mean, he just throws people left and right.
Tom, did you watch him closely at the Shrine Bowl or Shrine game he was on? Was he on your radar? And if so, what kind of week did he have down there?
I didn't really get a good look at him there. It's so much rotation in those games. But doing the profile for Robert Hunt this year, I got to see a lot of them because they played right next to each other. And he fits the mold of that Steelers guard that somebody is just going to, like Dave said in a tweet, throw somebody out the club. And they used at times they used him and Hunt to pull on plays, and it was just like two tractor trailers following through. It was fun to watch. I think he's going to be, it's probably not going to be this year, but I think he's going to be a starter for quite a few years.
Daniel, that's what I was going to ask about, just his year one usage. Obviously, there is a potential for competition at left guard, but it's unclear right now. Do you think Dotson plays at all year one, or do you consider 2020 to be a redshirt year while he learns a left guard position?
Yeah, so I feel like it's going to be a redshirt year only because of what's going on in the world right now. We don't know what's going to happen with OTAs or training camp. Mm-hmm. But if those are going on, I think he would at least have a shot to fight for that starting job. But for sure, I think 2021, he's in the mix. And just like Tom's saying, I think it'll be for years to come.
I think it's a great point. I think it's going to be tough to learn how to play left guard because he's just done so very little of it. And as we talked about with Dave T, I mean, it might feel like, just put him a left guard, but everything's opposite. Your punch, your football, your footwork, your placement of everything, your eyes, everything is just opposite. So it's a learning curve there. Dave, is that where you're kind of coming in, where he's probably going to be more or less redshirted year one?
Yeah, and I had an opportunity to talk to Rob Sale, the Louisiana Lafayette offensive coordinator and offensive line coach earlier today. Unfortunately, the quality of that call just wasn't there, so I'm not going to be able to present that call, that interview to the listeners. We tried 2 different times, and the cell service just wasn't great, and for whatever reason. But I got enough questions out of him, and one of the things that's been on my mind, and I know people probably heard me ask Dave T this the other day, is how much did he actually play left guard at Louisiana Lafayette? And the answer to that question is none, actually. And I got a hold of the guys at PFF and had them go back through their charting. They can't find anything on him at left guard. They found just what did I tweet you, Alex? Like 30-something snaps at right tackle, 30-something snaps in total, I think.
It was like 3. That was mostly in 2016, right? Like 3 this past year or something.
Right, at right tackle there. So to my understanding, it's pretty much been right guard throughout his whole career here. Now, Rob Sale, the offensive coordinator / offensive line coach, says, look, I don't see an issue with him switching over here. Now, as Daniel smartly points out here, having a virtual off season doesn't allow you to work on that muscle memory. So that's going to be it's too bad that we're not going to have the rookie mini camp and we're not going to have OTAs and stuff along those lines, because I think that's possibly, I'm not saying it's impossible, but we've heard Flozo Adams talk about it. We've heard kind of Ramon Foster just recently tweet about it as well too. I think one of his biggest obstacles at seeing playing time, barring injury, is just the fact that he doesn't have any experience playing at left guard.
Yeah, it's hard to be a virtual left guard and really learn the position. So we basically in the camp that Mcfarland is going to be your week 1 starter at left guard unless there's disaster at right tackle between Chukwuma Okorafor and Zach Banner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
And we all in agreement there, Dave? Yeah. You think Filer at left guard? Yeah. I know some people said Wisniewski, but then if Pouncey goes down, then Wisniewski gets the kick inside. Filer's got to kick over. Replacement at right tackle. You don't want to play those musical chairs when somebody gets hurt. 1-to-1 is kind of the way I look at it. So any weaknesses in Dotson's game, Tom? I'll just ask you briefly here. We talked about the strengths. Obviously, he's a people mover, great in the run game, plays with an edge, finishes his blocks. But what about pass pro? Anything in pass pro you want to mention?
Nothing that comes to mind that I can think of off the top of my head. With a lot of these guys coming in, they all need some work, and especially if he's going to be switching to the other side, like we were saying, the footwork's going to be different. It's going to be a learning process, but I think for the most part, he's stout enough where he's going to be able to hold his own inside there.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And while he's not the most athletic lineman that was testing, according to Dave, he was actually pretty good. He's got that Ramon Foster build where he's just hard to get around. He's got the length and size where that's going to be an issue. You can't go through him, getting around is going to be difficult. He's got the length to seal, similar to what Foster did. So any other final thoughts on Dotson before we move on?
I guess my one question is, did I read correctly he was going to try and pick up center as well?
He said that in the way that you would be like, I'll play, kick returner. Yeah, I'll be kick returner if they make me to. I think it'd be like a Matt Fowler, Chris Hubbard, or an emergency maybe, and he may pick it up a little bit on the side in camp. But Colbert said that he's a guard, and I view him very much as a guard, basically guard only.
Agreed.
Yeah, he looks like a young Foster. I mean, obviously Foster wasn't a quote unquote people mover, but just that lack of athleticism out in space. It feels like a Ramon Foster clone, but with obviously a higher draft value spent on it.
Right. Okay, let's move on to the 6th round. No 5th round pick for the Steelers this year. They took Antwon Brooks, the other Maryland selection, at in the 6th round pick, 198 overall. Daniel, I'll start with you because he was at the Senior Bowl, though I didn't really see a whole lot of him. It seemed pretty quiet to my untrained eye. But what did you see from Antwon Brooks, and what is your overall take on the selection?
Yeah, so same thing as you. Kind of flew under the radar there at the Senior Bowl. Didn't really stick out for anything, whether that's a good or bad thing. So I kind of have like a love-hate relationship with this pick. So I know Colbert called him half safety, half linebacker. And to me, I just look at it, okay, but can we get someone who could do at least one of those things, kind of thing? Where it's like, you could do a bit of both, but can he do either?
Right.
But I think he's going to see time on special teams, whether he works his way up from that as a in the box safety or as a linebacker maybe in sub packages. He's a 6th round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Let me interject something here real quick with both Alex and Daniel who went to the Senior Bowl. Did you guys bias against did you guys bias against him in any way at the Senior Bowl?
What do you mean?
Was he just not on the radar? Was he just somebody that did you watch him before the Senior Bowl? Was there at any point did you say, well, this could be a guy that the Steelers are interested in?
No, not for me. I didn't watch him beforehand, I don't believe. And I just say, as Daniel said, I don't have a whole lot of notes. I checked back my camp or my Senior Bowl report on him. He showed up twice in my notes. One, when Jalen Hurts threw the ball over him, I think on day 1 with a great throw. And then 2, only my wrap-up when I said I didn't really notice Antwon Brooks Jr. So I didn't have really a lot of expectations going in, and I just didn't see him. Not that he didn't make plays or made good plays, bad plays. I just didn't notice it. Daniel, was that the same for you?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, I don't have my notes here with me, but it was very brief, like nothing that instantly pops out in my head.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Josh, do you have that same concern that Daniel shared where you don't know exactly where the fit's going to be, and if you're half of one, you're half of the other, you might not be really anything at one particular spot?
Yes and no. I'm with Daniel in the sense that we basically got another Terrell Edmonds, a guy who struggles in coverage but is pretty solid in the box. But this was actually my favorite pick that they made, just because you can see exactly what this guy does well and what he can bring to this team, especially as the way that the league moves forward. The one guy who instantly popped to mind when watching his tape after he was drafted is a poor man's TJ Ward. You know, a box safety, hits like a truck. He's got some athleticism. This was for sure my favorite pick, but I think there's still an issue at safety because I do think Brooks Jr. slides down into the box full time eventually. He's not a safety. He's just not.
So you think he's going to be a linebacker in 2-3 years?
Yeah, one of those sub-package linebackers.
Okay.
So that's what I see. But I really like the pick. I see the fit. I see the role that he could play.
Tom, just in terms of the construction of this roster, Josh mentioned safety depth, one of the weaker spots for the team right now. I mean, for a 6th-round pick, what do you think his path is to make the 53, competing with Jordan Dangerfield and Marcus Allen, and what do you think his role could be in year one?
I think Marcus Allen should pay attention to this pick because I think Brooks is going to give him a run for his money here. As far as the roster construction goes, looking for players to profile before the draft, his name went across my board a couple times, but I was sure they were going to take a safety that could play deep, and I thought that's where the need was. So I thought that's where they were going to go. So I stayed away from Brooks because knowing from what I read, he's much better closer to the line of scrimmage. And I understand what they're trying to do with this hybrid position, but I feel it should come to them more organically, and I feel like they're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, trying to find the guy that fits that spot.
That's fair. Dave, I've whined enough about safety depth and those types of issues. I mean, do you feel like there's just an issue with safety depth, and how much of a concern is that for you?
Yeah, and look, I have to kind of punt when it comes to Brooks because I'm still trying to learn a lot about him. Obviously, he's going to have special teams value. Obviously, in the games that I have watched him, I think he's done a lot of good things coming off the edge as a blitzer. You see him out sometimes out in the slot there, moving around, and really you see. I mean, look, he had a couple games, I think 11 or 10 tackles even just this past season. So I see the value of him down low there. And he seems to be a smart kid, too. Looks like he's directing traffic a few times on kind of some switches pre-snap and things along those lines. But on the flip side, on one of those plays in particular, you see him kind of get beat by a running back on a wheel. You know, on a wheel route down the field. So those kind of coverage issues, look, they will find you on the field in the NFL level. So, yeah, I still think there is a deficiency. I understand if you want to use him as kind of that dime, maybe that dime player, and then let's see how he can kind of progress. But I don't see personally right now from the little bit of, once again, I got to be careful with what I say here because the amount of film I've watched him, I just don't see a very high ceiling on him right now, and especially as a cover 2 or a single high, you know. So I think he's a box and a down in the box guy, and that's pretty much it. And you know, I hold judgment on that until I'll watch more tape, but I am concerned. Obviously, I'm not concerned about Minka. I think Edmonds might be another year comfortable playing alongside Fitzpatrick. But look, we know those two have got to be able to be a little bit more interchangeable than they were last year. On top of it, so yeah, I am concerned about the depth at safety still.
Yeah, I want you to be careful, Dave. You put your foot in your mouth for one Maryland guy. I don't want to make it.
I know. It's just well, look, I've watched enough of Mcfarland now. I feel that I know who he is. I don't fully yet know. I don't think who Brooks is. I mean, who you know this kid is until I watch a little bit more. He's going to be good on special teams, I think. So there's that.
That's why I like the pick. Even if he never becomes anything defensively, I think there's certainly legitimate questions about that. This dude's going to be a rock star on special teams. He's high energy, high intensity, big hitter. He'll be a tone setter there for teams that lost a lot of guys there. Medikevich, Rosie Nix, Johnny Holden, Anthony Chiklos. You got to replace those guys too. I think Brooks Jr. can do that. And if that's all he is, that's fine because he's a 6th-round pick. And he's like Tyler Medikevich, where if that's what he does that well. I'm more than happy with getting 4 years minimum out of that kind of guy.
Do you think he can become a linebacker to play alongside? Or, I mean, does he project to you in any case as maybe a guy that sees that time next to Bush a lot?
Yeah, I'm with Josh. I think his long-term outlook is going to be basically doing the Mark Barron thing at linebacker. Now, he's a little short. He's 5'10" and a half or 5'8", whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Splitting hairs at that point. But, yeah, I think that him trying to stay at safety, the athleticism isn't going to be good enough, and I think the closer to the line of scrimmage he is. So I think maybe he can be used as a linebacker, maybe some sort of sub-package guy, and big nickel, can walk out on, obviously, tight ends and running backs, maybe the occasional slot receiver. He played in the slot a decent amount at Maryland. But, yeah, I see his conversion, if he's ever going to stick on defense, as either some sort of big nickel kind of guy or making that full-time conversion to linebacker.
For the listeners out there, and really for the rest of us here too, what's the one game everybody should run to go watch on Brooks?
Oh, man.
Texas in 2018? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what you're getting at.
Texas 2018, and then maybe let me pull up my notes on him.
Are you asking for his best game? Because Texas was up and down for me.
No, I'm just saying, what's the one game to give us a good idea of who he is?
Okay. Yeah, probably, I go with Texas.
Yeah, probably Texas. You get the good and the bad in that. So,
2018 Texas, okay.
2018, and then he was pretty decent against Minnesota last year as well. So, you do Texas 2018, Minnesota 2019. You can get a good feel for Brooks.
All right, there you go. So to round things out in the 7th round at 232, the Steelers took Carlos Davis, the defensive tackle / nose tackle from Nebraska. Tom, I'll start with you. Were you surprised the Steelers waited this long for a nose tackle, or are you just happy with the nature of the position, how it's becoming devalued, and the options they already have? I mean, did this surprise you that they waited till the 7th round to address this area?
Well, I think we all got our answer on what they feel about the position. I wasn't surprised that they waited that long because I did a little digging into their stats or into their draft the past few years, and this is the 6th defensive lineman they've taken in either the 6th or 7th round. So they have a history of doing that. Now they've gotten some play out of McCullers and L.T. Walton and Isaiah Buggs, but the production just isn't there drafting a defensive lineman that late. Those 3 guys combined over 11 seasons have 63 tackles, and Carlos Davis might make the team, but how many plays is he going to get? How much are they going to use him? I think that 7th pick could have been used on another position like an inside linebacker where they actually have drafted that late and gotten production from.
Josh, what do you know about Davis's game? The good, the bad, the ugly? I mean, how much have you studied him? I know we didn't have a report on him until I wrote about it after the fact, but what are your thoughts on Davis overall?
Yeah, I mean, he is what he is on tape. He's not a fluid mover. He's not powerful. I thought they would go Nebraska 7th round. I just thought it would be a teammate, Darion Daniels, who's a big run stopper in the middle of the Cornhuskers defense. But, yeah, with Davis, he shows some flashes as a pass rusher. Doesn't really use his hands well. He can convert some of that speed to power. There's a bull rush he has against Wisconsin. I think it was 2016. It was his freshman year. I know it's going back a while, but he walked a big farm boy back into the quarterback for the sack. So there's some power there. I just don't see him sticking at this point because he's not an either or guy in the sense that he's a good run stopper or a good pass rusher, if that makes sense. He just doesn't have that one standout trait that's going to, have him be the last defensive lineman on this roster.
Yeah, Daniel, I'll kind of bounce off of what Tom was saying. I mean, my question coming into the draft is the same question I have exiting the draft. Who are the Steelers starting nose tackle on week 1? Who do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, so I actually had the same thing. I wrote down some notes here too, and I wrote, still leaves the big question, who's replacing Hargrave? And I mean, if it's McCullers, I think we've all seen what McCullers is like, so I think you're in big trouble there. Is it Wormley? I don't know, but Colbert said he's a defensive end in a 3-4, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have Buggs. But that's a lot of speculation as well. You're speculating that he's going to play defensive tackle, and we haven't seen any real proof of that. And then when I was thinking about Buggs, it also brought me to another question. So for these second-year guys who were drafted last year, I know they talk a lot about when these guys come into their second offseason, they know what to expect and they're ready. Well, with everything going on, how are they going to prepare to take that jump? It's going to be a lot tougher. So I think that's a big question for Buggs as well, for people who are expecting him to make a big leap. But yeah, I'm just as confused as you as to who's replacing Hargrave.
Dave, how would you answer that same question? I'm leaning towards McCullers and Alulu as the most logical fits at the position.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and you and I have talked about this. I don't know how many times we're going to be in wait and see mode. I think on this for a little while because Wormley. I mean, there's just not enough tape there on Wormley to say, okay, this can be the guy in the middle. Now you have shown that he is good against the run inside, okay, but can he do that on a regular basis in a base situation there? And bless Alulu's heart, great season last year, but I mean, can we expect that? And can we expect that inside? And even if you do, look, he's going to be better against the run than he is a pass. So you're almost saying, okay, well, if we throw one of these guys out there, Wormley or Alulu as a base nose tackle there, then we're kind of punting on the idea that either one of those two can get after unless we get creative in a scheme aspect, either one of those guys being able to rush the passer there. So, look, this is the team normally, and we'll have to see how these extra two roster spots on game day work out there. But this team normally only carries at most 6 defensive linemen on a 53-man roster, and it's really hard to envision them carrying more than that, even with the extra roster spots, because normally a defensive lineman is not going to give you anything on special teams there. So, are they going to watch? Are they going to watch the free agent, the veteran free agency here the rest of the way, and maybe do something there? I'm kind of hoping they do, to be quite honest with you, because I just don't know who's going to play nose tackle for you right now.
Right, and I know that position is devalued. It's not worth what it was when you picked Casey Hampton 19th overall back in 2001, but still, it's over 300 snaps a season in AFC North. That's tight end heavy. It's going to keep you in your base defense, and obviously some of the best rushing attacks and better running backs in football. So that's the worry there. We all kind of agree then that Carlos Davis very unlikely to make the 53 without an injury and probably spend his first year on the practice squad.
Yeah, and I we'll probably get to this later with the UDFAs, but I think there's one guy he's going to compete with for that practice squad spot. But guys, I don't know if you guys answered this on a previous podcast or not, but PFF has Buggs down for 2 snaps at nose tackle last year. You read anything into that at all? I mean, aside from McCullers, I think he's the only guy on the roster that has actual nose tackle snaps.
I can look at my charting, Dave. You can vamp while I try to look that up.
Well,
it's just 2 snaps.
Here's what I have just recently going over some charting and all. Somebody asked a number of times the Steelers defense had exactly 3 defensive linemen on the field for a play last season, and how many of those plays included Javon Hargrave. The answer to that, at least in rough estimates, is 312 total plays that they had exactly 3 defensive linemen on the field for a play, and 242 of those featured Hargrave in there. Exactly the other 70 plays were Daniel McCullers. So unless Alex has something different in the charting there as far as Buggs, and even if it is, it can't be but about 2 or 3 snaps that Buggs was in there. So I don't know. No, I guess the answer is I don't. Look, I don't think we can read anything into anything right now when it comes to nose tackle. I really think we're all going to sit here and have to take a wait and see approach with this thing right now.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, for everyone, again, I know that sub is the new base, that you're a nickel and dime more than you are 3-4, but the average there in 3-4 over the last 5 years is 31.8% of the time. So that's still, again, over 300 snaps a season. I don't want to ignore that and have an overcorrection and say that it doesn't matter at all, because it does, but you're right. We just don't know. I have Buggs down for 1 snap at nose tackle last year, that was a nickel, not the 3-4, which just as alignment because it was a 4th down against Miami where they were shifting Buggs basically over center. So 1 is what I have. They have 2. Either way, it's not a lot, and it's hard to see him being the guy because he's 290 pounds, and he's going to be a 3-tech, a sub package, rusher, but as someone that's going to take on double teams, I don't see Buggs being that guy. All right. What are your just final thoughts on the draft class as a total? Anything surprise you? Anything that you feel like it should have gone a different direction? Josh, I'll start with you. Just your overall impressions of this draft class.
I think they obviously filled some holes throughout. I still go back to that Mcfarland pick that I'm still scratching my head. I really don't see a way that he gets on the field enough in 2020 to have the impact that some fans are hoping for. But overall, I mean, the Claypool pick is really sound. I think right away he's going to be a red zone weapon. You added 2 of those guys in Claypool and Ebron. So that's a huge help for an offense that really struggled last year in the red zone. You get obviously edge depth. You get an offensive lineman to help fix the run game. I think it was a solid class all around, especially when you consider they had 1 pick in the top 100.
I'll ask the very clickbaity, buzzy question. If you had to give it a draft grade, it's very arbitrary. It's very little right now, but I'm gonna make you do it here, Josh. You had to give it a grade. What would you give the Steelers?
Oh man, B-. I really think that for me, the Mcfarland pick drags it down. Now I'm probably gonna end up, sticking my foot in my mouth, kind of like Dave there.
You want to stick my foot in your mouth?
Oh, okay. Oh no.
My luck, he'll rip off an 80-yarder on his first touch, and I'll have egg on my face. But
in your mentions, it'll be in your Twitter.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun. But it was a solid class, B-. I really think that the Claypool pick has a chance to surprise some people just with what he can do out wide.
Daniel, your overall valuation and arbitrary draft grade for me?
So overall, I really like the upside of this year's class, and it may not be up there with the rest of our AFC North division because they all had great draft classes, but I think it boils down to 2 players, and that's Highsmith and Dotson. So I think if Highsmith can develop and he looks like a stud, then the Steelers got a real steal. But if he just ends up being depth, then it's kind of like you already wasted limited draft resource on now a depth piece in the closing window of your championship, right? If Dotson reaches his potential, then you have maybe the first real piece of the future O-line, I want to say, with DeCastro and Filer, because, AV and Pounce are getting up there too. So that's going to be a transition in the coming years. And then same thing with Claypool. You know what you're going to get. He's going to contribute in the red zone, down the field, on special teams. And my arbitrary grade, I'll probably say a B.
Okay, a B is the 10 and 6 answer of draft grades.
It damn sure is. That way you can B. Josh had it is B-. You can hedge that both ways.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, but that's the answer I might go with too. But Tom, what's your overall evaluation and draft grade?
I think this draft was set up completely by free agency. They filled the major holes they needed to in free agency. So when it came to draft time, they weren't pressed to reach or try and grab anything they really needed. All the guys they picked are basically depth positions. They make the team stronger from front to back, and adding the 2 speed guys to the offense is adding the probably the one trait they really didn't have when Ben was at the helm. So I think overall it was just depth across the board, and I'm with Josh. I had B- in my head as well.
Okay, Dave, I'll ask you a slightly different version of that question because we kind of know your thoughts on the class as a whole. What is still the biggest need on this roster post-draft where you feel like you still have not filled that position adequately enough?
Yes, 10 and 6. Okay. No, look, I think nose tackle and safety depth here. I think those are 2 areas that you've really got to look at right now here. And I had Kevin Colbert's been on the radio a couple times, and he's thrown out there, look, we'll look at this thing. We'll see how the offseason progresses. And he wanted to make sure that to remind us that last year he added tight end via trade, and obviously a safety in Minkah Fitzpatrick via trade. So I don't think people should be stunned if the Steelers send away a 5th or a 6th round draft pick right before the start of the year to maybe address a couple of those positions there. Plain and simple.
Yeah, I agree. And according to Nick Cortave over the Cap, he was currently projected to get a 4th and 6th round comp pick for next season. Obviously not set in stone. The games teams play. We found that out last year with LJ Fort and Dante Moncrief, but worth noting nonetheless. And Kevin Colbert's been aggressive in August among the league leaders in summer trades. Okay, so that
would you send a 4th round draft pick tomorrow, a 4th round draft pick next year to the Jets tomorrow for Steve McClendon for 1 year?
No, too rich. A 6th, potentially a 4th is too high.
Yeah, not for a guy who's going to play 30% of the snaps. That's a lot for me.
Well, but would you send a 6th next year?
Absolutely.
I'll be a lot more tempted for McClendon or somebody else. I mean, maybe not just McClendon, but maybe someone like him.
Here I am speaking in absolutes. That's not good.
Yeah, Josh, you're gonna learn about this podcast. We are kings at qualifying everything. All right, so I want to move on from the 6 selections and talk about some of the undrafted players. I know I'm still working through a ton of these guys. I'm sure Dave is as well. We've started some undrafted player profiles. We will profile all the 10 UDFAs brought in. Tom, I'll start with you from Montano, the center. What's his name? Christian Montano from Tulane. What is your profile and reaction to him?
Yeah, he was a graduate transfer from Brown University. You don't see that too often, the Ivy League, ended up at Tulane. But he's got good size and good length. He uses his hands pretty well. He shows good awareness in pass protection, and when he's uncovered, he looks to help people. He's not afraid to get a slab of ribs when he can get a chance. Some of the negatives, he gets his feet, he gets upright and gets his feet too far underneath him, and it gets him all off balance. When he's losing against power, he resorts to leaning, and he's kind of heavy-footed on the move. So if you ask him to block at the second level right in front of him in the middle, he's really good at doing that. But as far as getting outside on outside zone or outside on screens, he's very slow to get out there. So I think he'd be fighting for a spot with JC and Kenoy, I think is the guy they signed from the XFL.
Yep, John Kenoy. Yep.
So I think that it's kind of an uphill battle for him, but we'll see. We don't know how many reps these guys are going to get, so it's definitely going to be an uphill battle for him to make.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, tell us about USC linebacker John Huston.
Okay, so John Huston, he's got good play recognition skills. He sniffs out the play direction fairly quickly. He's got very active hands, very physical when engaging with blocks. The negatives about him, he gets lost like in the junk. He's not good getting through the junk, which you need from a linebacker. He's got sluggish movement sometimes, especially when moving laterally. It looks like he's playing in quicksand, I wrote down. He's got tight hips. He misses quite a few tackles, so I don't know about his long-term projection. I think maybe just a camp body. He was a team captain.
I don't like those camp body words.
You can't say that. Alex will get you 2 minutes for high sticking on Daniel.
Okay, I'll go into timeout.
Okay, but you're not seeing a whole lot there with John Huston.
No.
Okay. Josh, what about Leo Lewis? He's a guy that almost seems as interesting for his off-the-field story as opposed to his on-field story.
Yeah, for those that don't know, his off-the-field, he committed to Ole Miss in 2015, I think the winter of 2015, and then late in the process flipped to Mississippi State. And in that process, he took a payment from Mississippi State, but told investigators, if I'm remembering correctly, that Ole Miss had paid him. And it came out in the wash that Mississippi State had actually paid him, and Ole Miss got hammered. If you guys remember that recruiting scandal under Hugh Freeze.
What was it, $21,000? Was that the payment that he was given?
Yes.
21 grand.
Yeah. And he was a high recruit. I think he was number 34 in the country. He was the number 2 player in Mississippi coming out of college. He was a big name, came into college with a ton of potential, and it just never transpired. I mean, I think he played in over 50 games. Yeah, 51 career games, 48 starts in 4 years. Just there's not the production on the field. He struggles getting off of blocks. He lets linemen climb to him at the second level far too much. And when he does, he gets caught flat-footed and driven backwards. There's a rep against Texas A&M last season where he gets pushed pretty much out of the back of the end zone by a guard who climbed from the 4-yard line to the goal line to reach him.
Wow.
It's tough tape, but he's got good movement skills. He's got good range when he opens it up. But I hate to say this, but I question the want to with him. There are a ton of reps where he just looks like he's going through the motions, doesn't want to be there, and that's tough to see with a guy that has as much physical ability as anyone. But I do think that he's a practice squad guy who could, in the right system, find that want to, turn that motor on and figure it out in the pros.
Yeah, well, it sounds like there's talent to tap into if it all comes together for him. Dave, I want to ask you about the class here in a second, but Tom, I know you mentioned earlier about defensive linemen who might compete with Carlos Davis. Were you referring to Josiah Coatney or Calvin Taylor or somebody else?
That was Josh, I think, that said that.
Was that Josh? Who was it?
Yeah,
that
that was
sorry. I apologize. Josh, I'll leave it to you.
I was referring to Coatney, Josiah Coatney from Ole Miss, another high recruit who never quite put it together. But there's some flash on his tape. He's got some power. He's got heavy hands. Plays the run pretty well. He's not going to give you much as a pass rusher. He just doesn't have that movement skill. But he's tall. He's got good reach. He comes from the SEC. I'm sure Carl Dunbar is familiar with him, just in terms of Bama playing Ole Miss almost every year. But he's a guy to watch. I mean, he's got the size and the strength and the experience in a Power 5 conference to latch on the practice squad and maybe, down the line, see snaps.
And Dave, your favorite UDFA, is that Bandy for the corner from the U?
Oh yeah, let me tell you.
I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah, I can't stop. It's causing me not to go through other tape right now because I keep want to say, okay, I want to look at this game to see if I can find something more in there. You want to talk about a guy that reminds you really a lot of Mike Hilton. Mike Hilton on steroids, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
This kid, I've got a couple of clips coming up that I saved from Twitter there. That a couple against Florida as well too. He will come up and he will pop you. He's got nice timing, blitzing up off the edge. Look, he's got the questionable aspects in the coverage. I think against North Carolina, you see him bite on a double move, get beat over. It's not all gravy with him by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm sure the coverage end of it is what's probably maybe led to him maybe not getting drafted here. But look, Mike Hilton didn't get drafted either, right? So he should make Danny Smith very happy, over the summer once he gets on the field there, assuming that happens at training camp there. And I guess the question is can he end up carving himself out a spot? Maybe as a special teamer there, and Lord knows how injuries go and all like that throughout the summer here. I think at worst, though, right now, maybe you're looking at this kid as a practice squad guy because he will. Boy, you watch his tape, you understand why the Steelers like him. He'll come up on that edge and them running backs coming around the edge there. There's one I got of him cutting down A.J. Dillon on the outside. A.J. Dillon's not a small dude.
No.
And Bandy kind of is there. So his tape's worth exploring deeper. I don't know which one of you guys are going to write him up, but definitely go into his 2018 tape as well, too. But I really like his tape.
I think it was the season opener against Florida this past year where Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler were on the call. Herbstreit called him the most physical corner in the country, which kind of caught my eye. I was like, oh, wow, okay. And yeah, some of his highlights, it's like, wow, he really packs a punch. But yeah, the coverage issues are a concern. Is he a threat maybe to Justin Lane at this point? Or
No. Look, I've still got a ways to go on him too. There, I'm talking more in a highlight sense on him. But he is kind of a cross between Steven Nelson and Mike Hilton. And let me tell you, Bandy makes a play on you, he's going to tell you about it too. he likes to stand up over those guys and inform them of what just happened and give them a play-by-play of it too. I don't view him as a threat really to a roster spot yet, but we all know how that can change. But I think I'll put it to you this way: I can't wait to read the report on whichever one of you guys do it on there, and make sure you go back into his 2018 tape as well.
Remember, this team kept 6 corners last year. They didn't replace Artie Burns with anybody, so that 6 spot, they're not that they're guaranteed to keep 6, but it's certainly open. So he just maybe adding himself on the spot. Yeah, he was one of those curious guys that came out a year early that probably regretting doing so, and maybe teams didn't know he was going to come out, and they were late in the process, especially with everything going on pandemic-wise. So that could be a steal, just the way that Mike Hilton turned out to be a steal for the Steelers. I have the report on Calvin Taylor from Kentucky coming up next couple of days. He's interesting because he's 6'8", 310, who had 8.5 sacks in the SEC last year, but he's got the Big Dan frame with the really, like, if Big Dan skipped leg day, that's Calvin Taylor. So he's got a really thin lower half. There's some power there. There's some effort. He definitely chases the football well, but he's just kind of a lumber. And the leverage is an issue. He'll pop up. He loses ability to use his length to his advantage. So he's a guy that I think was announced as defensive lineman, but I think may end up converting to an offensive tackle, just like Villanueva, just like Brian Mahalik did. That's a tough conversion, obviously, but this guy also played left tackle in high school, so he has some background with the offensive line. I would probably try him as a conversion tackle project as opposed to trying to keep him as a base 3-4 end. Okay, I think that's everything I had draft-wise. Dave, any other final thoughts? Or are we doing reader emails this week, right?
We'll hold it because I got a couple more questions. For these guys, I want to cover a couple things, and maybe all of us can learn something along the way here. And Alex, you can go one by one with these guys on this. Who is your favorite prospect to break down would be one question that I have this offseason, regardless of whether or not the Steelers took him or not. B, what position do you feel you are best at scouting? And I think C is, what ways do you think you can improve as a YouTube scout?
Who wants to start this one, though? I'll let one of you three begin.
I can start it if you guys want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the first question, Dave, was favorite prospect?
Yeah. Which one did you enjoy scouting the most, even if it wasn't a player drafted by the Steelers?
The most, I'd probably say Derek Suka from North Dakota State, and then probably Sewu Alanalua from TCU. I was really high on him and really disappointed to see him go undrafted and sign with the Cowboys. But Suka was a pretty freaky edge rusher out of North Dakota State. He went to the Broncos in the 7th round. He's got some tape where he can really turn the corner and get to the quarterback. I know that was obviously
he's kind of a poor man. So the kid out of Michigan last year,
Winovich.
Yeah, kind of a poor man's Winovich, right?
Yeah, a little better mover, but I think Winovich played the run a lot better. But yeah, you're right in the same area. But yeah, those were my two that I just had a ton of fun watching. Another guy was Lynn Bowden Jr. That's the guy I really wanted to be in a Steeler uniform, just because he's the jack of all trades guy. I'm not even sure where he went at this point. I can't quite remember.
Oakland.
Was it? Oh, yeah, great.
Raiders stuff.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of guys that were watched this year that did not become Steelers. So
all right, and part two would be what position do you view as your best to scout? And then part three would be what areas do you think you need to improve in just overall as a YouTube scout?
I think I'm pretty solid with edge guys. I think I understand those guys the most. I just feel comfortable with them for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, but that's what I've gravitated to with you guys. That's usually the position I grab the most. And I think just understanding more schematics when I'm watching stuff, what an offense is trying to do, what play the defense is in, things like that. It's tough to see on TV tape, especially for college guys. So that's one area I'd like to improve.
Daniel, feel free to answer the same.
Okay, so for the guys I loved watching, definitely Cal linebacker Evan Weaver sticks out. He was a lot of fun. Miami edge rusher Trayvon Hill. And probably the Ohio State corner there, Damon Arnett, who Oakland took. Those three are the top that stick out. Were just a lot of fun to watch. And then, I don't mean to jump back to a guy the Steelers picked, but Anthony Mcfarland, too, is a ton of fun. Even with Hill, I was surprised. I think he went 7-2 or undrafted. But he was a ton of fun to watch. I feel like as a pass rusher, he's got a lot of tools that, with the right coaching, a team can extract out of him. Arnett going in the first Oakland, I know it surprised a ton of people. It didn't really surprise me. I think he's a great man cover corner. I thought he would have been good for the Vikings as well. And then Evan Weaver, I feel like I've been banging the desk on since the Senior Bowl. Maybe not the strongest in coverage, but coming downhill, I don't think there's that many linebackers who are better than him, save for the first tier of guys, obviously. But yeah.
Favorite position to or the strongest position that you feel that you are at evaluating.
I'm probably more comfortable with wide receivers and linebackers. I don't know why. Same thing as Josh. I just gravitate towards that, and I love watching those guys.
All right, where do you need to improve at?
Same thing, probably just schematics and projecting. More so, understanding what they did in college and can that project to the next level? How does that fit for what the Steelers do? Trying to answer those questions. That's something I've definitely thought a lot more about as I've progressed, watching these guys year by year, and just trusting your eyes, trusting what you see.
Tom?
Okay, the two guys that come to mind that really stuck out for me that I enjoyed watching were Ashton Davis, the safety from Cal, and Logan Wilson, a linebacker from Wyoming. As much as I hoped, I knew neither of them would be Steelers because they're both 24 years old already. But Ashton Davis he can play deep, he can play in the slot, he can play in the box. He's a sure tackler. He's got track speed. I just think he can do everything for your defense. Wilson was a ridiculously productive guy for Wyoming. I think he had over 300 or maybe even 400 tackles. He had 10 interceptions. He could cover. He had good instincts. Steelers don't go out west for players too often, and with the age of those two guys, I knew they weren't going to be there. Position that I think I'm best at. It's funny, but I think I'm getting maybe not the best, but I'm getting better on the offensive and defensive line. And maybe that's because it's easier to see on the tape because, that's what the camera's focused. But I think I've gotten stronger in those two areas. And I also like doing off-the-ball linebacker as well. And where I need to improve I think trusting myself is a big thing. I question myself, especially when it comes to grades. I know at least once I sent a message to Alex asking him to change a grade that I had already submitted. And especially early on in the process, I get excited because we're back, watching film again. And I think my grades are a little too high early in the process. And then they start to come down and normalize. But, trying to control what I see and trusting what I see and grading upon that.
That is a fantastic answer, and I think if we learned anything, look, none of these guys coming out, even the top media guys, the draft analysts, and I know some of these guys like Kuiper and these other guys supposedly watch the tape all off season long, but coming out of a college season, man, I think you really got to be careful. I think you got to take each player at face value because I think you can get caught up. We all saw what happened, people getting caught up in the national championship game with a guy like Thad Moss, there. So I think
I'm raising my hand over here.
Well, I mean, look, it's easy to do, and I understand the excitement. Boy, I mean, I know guys like me and Alex, man. We can't focus on the college guys until the Steelers season is over. So once the college season's over, it's like, all right, I go from knowing nothing about these guys in January to Lord, I almost sound like I know what I'm talking about by the time the draft rolls around there. I mean, that's how much we have to cram in there. And because we have to cram, it's never enough tape, in my opinion. And I learned a valuable lesson. My most valuable lesson I think I learned this year was with a guy like Michael Pittman. Got to check more than just the current year's tape. You at least got to go back the last 2 years with a guy and go searching for some of the things that you think other people are seeing that maybe you didn't see in a year there. And I think it's incredibly easy to get biased on a guy. And I think Tom hit on it there. I think it's easy in the early portion of this thing to say this guy is a second-round guy, and then you turn around and he's drafted in the fifth. And I prefer you guys saying, is this guy a day one guy? Is this guy a day two guy? And then is this guy an early day three or late day three? Because we all know it only takes one team to like a guy, and it blows your 5th round rating up on a guy or 4th round rating on a guy if he's taken in the 2nd there. But that makes it hard. I think just stacking these guys and making sure play the process and getting through a lot of names before trying to stack a bigger board that way.
Yeah,
Alex?
Alex,
ahead,
can I
Josh.
jump in there real quick?
Yeah, feel free.
The one thing that for me personally, I need to do a better job of thinking about it a little more is kind of putting a little bit more stock in the testing numbers as well. Like I'll go back to Sewu Alanalua. That report I did posted online February 1st. So that was early in the process. And I had an early day 3 grade on him. And then he didn't do too well at the combine. I thought he'd probably run a 4.6. I think he ran a 4.67. So some of the testing numbers weren't there. So I think I need to put a little bit more stock in testing. Not say it's the be-all, end-all, but go back to the tape if a guy I like doesn't test well. And I think that's one guy that's kind of opened my eyes because I thought he was a 4th, 5th round guy, and he went undrafted and went to a team that already has 2 solid running backs. So yeah, that's one area that I think this process has helped teach me to look at further.
I would just say 2 things quickly. One challenge and this is some inside baseball stuff, I'm sure people are just tuned out at this point, but one challenge we do have is that, we're not like a draft guide where we can wait till we've watched everybody and gone through all the testing and released it. We're doing this, our reports come out late January into February, and so we can't really adjust, and maybe testing changes a guy's grade, and we're kind of stuck to that. So we do have a challenge of that, which is something maybe, I don't know if we can change or really not, just kind of the system and the way in which the website works. The other thing I'd like to do, and I've been thinking of this for a while now, is maybe come up with a grading system for all of us to adhere to instead of us, because maybe what I view as a mid-day 2 guy is different than what Josh views as a mid-day 2 guy or whatever. So maybe we can create a scale where we're putting just a number to it, like you see on a lot of different outlets where you just put a grade. You don't even say this is where he's going to go. This is just our personal grade of what we think talent-wise for him. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if we'll do that or not, but something I like to kick around before next draft season.
And let's face it. I mean, we there's only so many. Look, these guys have. Most of you guys have job to do. You're not like Alex and I can really sit around all day and watch tape all day. And even if you do have that time all day, there's only so many players that you can watch in an amount of time and give them proper due of at least 3 games. And quite honestly, I think 6 games. If you really want to do a good evaluation on a guy, 6 games, 3 from the previous year and three from the year before that, if you want to do it right. But who has time to do all that there? So we're not pro scouts, but we're constantly striving to be better at identifying these guys, and especially when it comes to guys that we think potentially will be drafted by the Steelers. That's why we're kind of, that kind of keeps with the theme of being a Steelers website and providing draft coverage for a Steelers website.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like Josh has a family. I'm just a big kid. Like Josh has real responsibilities and stuff that he's got to do too. So that's a challenge for those guys. All right, Dave. Any other questions?
No, and we'll get to more of these. I know we had probably mentioned that we talked. Any final thoughts, guys, on what any final thoughts? I mean, look, now's your time because it's gonna probably be a little while to be back on the show again there. So let's go one by one and give kind of closing thoughts, whatever you want to say about anything, and we'll start with Josh.
I'm just so glad that we can stop talking about Jameis Winston. I mean, at what point do Steeler fans put stock into what the general manager actually says? We feel comfortable with our quarterback room. We're not going to look to add. And they don't do that, and everyone's, in an uproar. And please, national media, stop linking every free agent quarterback to the Steelers.
Yeah, look, we could bang the table till the cows come home, but what good does? I mean, would it maybe be nice to have maybe a more veteran guy in there backing it up Ben? But those guys call. I mean, look at Charlie Batch and Byron Leftwich and Gronkowski. When they had it, they were playing those guys minimum salary benefit deals for the most part. There, year after year after year. That's the way. If the Steelers can get a guy like that, great. Okay, but even so, I mean, you're talking. When is the last time that this team really went out and paid high dollar for a backup quarterback there. So even if you got to listen to the general manager, you got to listen to what they say, and at no point have we been given any inclination throughout this offseason that this team was not happy with Mason Rudolph backing up Ben Roethlisberger, and then the battle, of course, being on between Paxton Lynch and Devlin Hodges for the number 3. So it doesn't make us look any smarter by me and Alex dedicating 5 minutes a show to saying, boy, we really think they should sign Winston or Cam Newton or Andy Dalton. All right, off my soapbox. Carry on.
Yeah, I just think that you guys with the podcast and just at the site as the whole, you do a good job of when these big name players come available. You're not like, oh, yeah, perfect fit for the Steelers. Let's go get him because he's the name. You take the time to look at the actual fit. You look at the salary cap, and you guys are measured in your takes of who they should go after and who they shouldn't. I mean, I think you both were on the Minka train last year. I think, Dave, you even wrote a piece saying they should go after him.
Yeah, my only sticking my foot in my mouth there was I just didn't think that Kevin Colbert would come up a first-round pick for him. I thought they should explore trading for him. Yeah, most definitely, because I saw the fit and all. Now, I was a little concerned about his mom being on Twitter and all that, the way that stuff played out in kind of Miami there. Yeah, but it still didn't mean I didn't think that they shouldn't explore the trade. I just was convinced that there was no way Kevin Colbert was going to give up a first-round draft pick to get him.
Yeah, I think a fan base as a whole needs to relax on some of the big names because the whole Leonard Fournette situation or Jameis, or now it's Andy Dalton today. We just got to relax and, trust what the GM is saying to the media is true and take a step back and actually look at the roster makeup and the salary cap situation.
Daniel, final thoughts? Anything?
Yeah, but to add to what Josh is saying too, like even with the Steelers front office, they haven't been the type who are like calling bluffs. Like usually if they say something, they mean it. They said, like, we don't think Antonio Brown will be back by training camp. They said that last year. He wasn't back. We're confident in Mason. They've shown they're confident in Mason. Like, so yeah, I do feel like it would be a disservice to try to parade around like the Steelers should sign this guy or they should do this, do that. And I do like how we do try to keep it balanced. And I think one of my closing thoughts with the whole draft is, we're not like a draft website. We're a Steelers website. So the Steelers pick a guy. It's easy to just say, oh, they reached, or this guy sucks, I don't like this player. But there's more knowledge and more service to give to people if you try to explain, well, what were the Steelers thinking by doing this? And, instead of just saying, like, this is why they're wrong. He was rated this on my board. And it's like, well, the Steelers they're not looking at your board. They have their own board. They have their own front office and scouts, and we trust them. And just to try to see what are their plans for this guy.
Right, and our job, from whether we agree with the pick or not, or like the guy, or think they should have drafted a running back or whatever, our job now is to dissect this player, both the good and bad, and let our listeners and our readers know exactly who these kids are, and give them a better idea who they are, good, both the good and bad, with them. And I think that's one thing that we specialize in doing this part of, because look, we're going to have a lot of time coming up here where we're going to attack these guys from several different angles here in the next few months. All right, Tom.
Okay, first of all, no matter what year it is, and whether it's Ozzie Smith or Eric DeCosta, the Ravens seem to pick everybody that I like every year.
Welcome to Ravens Depot.
Serious. Every time they take a pick, I'm like, come on, serious? My second thought is whether it's for us, the evaluators, or for the fans, we should all remove phrases like "he'll never be there" or "he'll never make it to that spot."
Amen.
Because if we kept track of them throughout the year, 99% of them will be wrong. And my final thought is, I'm really impressed by the work we do here. Like Daniel said, we're not a draft site here, but the work we did this year, I think it was almost 200 reports. Kudos to everybody here. I think we did a fantastic job.
It's incredible. It blows my mind. I'm so incredibly blessed. And people, the listeners just don't understand how there really is not much of a hamster wheel that has to run behind the scenes on this, because I think you guys, I mean, and you're not under fire here by any means, but I'm not in your DMs 14 times a week. I mean, I let you guys go your own directions here and write what you want to write and those kind of things, and the site runs best when I don't have to tell you guys what to do, So yeah, I am incredibly blessed, and I think it's one of our best efforts ever, and it's just so incredibly fun to see you guys grow as scouts too, and to turn around and the best feeling, I think, and I think Alex can attest to this. He's been with me long enough, kind of my right hand man, like Matthew Marksey, is the fact that, man, as soon as a draft pick is made, regardless of who that pick is, we can instantly throw up that profile on that kid one of you guys have done right on Twitter, right up to the front page. And I mean, I just the value of that, it just I can't put put into words there. But yeah, really enjoy that aspect of it. Alex.
Well, my train's coming here, which of course it is. But no, I echo those thoughts. I think we did a great job, and just the continuity and the stability we have here, I think is unparalleled.
All right, give out their Twitter handles there, Alex.
You guys can go through.
Oh, okay, Josh, what? Give them your Twitter handle.
All right, so I am at by Josh Carney. That's BYJOSHCARNEY.
Daniel, Twitter handle.
So I'm at StatsGuyDaniel.
And Tom, Twitter handle.
At THMead3.
All right, great. And once again, guys, I certainly do appreciate it. And once again, one of the best things I have is going back and just watching you guys grow and being able to read your reports and trust and know that I have a lot better idea who those guys are. So we'll be having you guys on. I think we'll try to make it a little bit more frequent, maybe at some point during the off season, have each of you on, maybe individually talking about some things and all. So with that, I think we're about 90 minutes into this thing, so it's probably a good time to wrap it up here. So with that, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex Kozora on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. You can follow the show at Terrible Podcast on Twitter. You can email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought about kind of this terrible podcast palooza roundtable little affair kind of setting. Let us know what I know it was probably awkward for a little bit there, but we want your kind of thoughts on how this episode went there. So that's theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com where you can make a donation that way. Also, if you'd like an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, go to the site, hit ad-free button up right navigational bar, and that up for $25 a year. Calendar year, you can have an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with us throughout the pre-draft and draft process. And Alex and I will be back next week, hard at it on the Terrible Podcast. So as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.